Vancouver's housing market just crossed a threshold no one ever wanted to see. Right now, across Metro Vancouver, approximately 2,500 newly built condos sit completely empty and unsold. 2,500. These aren't old units in need of repair, these are brand new, luxury-grade towers, monuments to a promise that died on the vine. That number, 2,500, has doubled in just 12 months. But the silent, empty towers are just the visible symptom of something far more devastating, a rot that runs right through the core of this city's economy. Vancouver is experiencing a mass exodus on two fronts simultaneously. Tech workers are fleeing the city in record numbers, and investors, both foreign and domestic, are pulling billions in capital out of the market. Together, these two forces are not just slowing the market, they are creating a downward spiral that is crippling the entire housing ecosystem and dragging everyone down with it. The financial weight of this collapse is soul-crushing, and the personal stories behind the statistics are a total wake-up call. We are about to expose the truth about who is really paying the price for the most catastrophic Canadian housing reversal since records began. If this story, this raw look at a broken system, hits close to home, please take a moment right now. Smash that subscribe button. My mission is to expose the uncomfortable truths that mainstream media won't touch, and I can only do that with your support. Every subscription tells me you want more of this content. Click it now, and let's dive back into the financial abyss. The numbers paint a terrifying picture, a picture industry veterans say they've never seen before. Total US tech layoffs in 2025 have exceeded 76,000 workers. A staggering 16,084 cuts took place in just February alone. And Vancouver, heavily integrated into the North American tech ecosystem, has felt every single one of those cuts. This isn't just about Microsoft announcing 9,000 layoffs, or Amazon, Meta, and others reducing headcount in their Vancouver teams. It's not just about a local fusion energy company, backed by billionaires, having to cut a quarter of its workforce. We saw a Vancouver AI startup lay off 85 employees, accounting for a massive 40% of its team. Hootsuite eliminated over 400 positions. Shopify cut 1,000 workers. These are not minor adjustments, these are fundamental restructurings driven by a market that shifted faster than anyone anticipated, tearing through lives and shattering financial stability across the city. Think about the personal chaos this unleashed, the sudden panic, the sleepless nights, the frantic resume updates, the shame of telling your partner that the well-paid tech job that justified your high rent is now gone. But the layoffs tell only half the story. The truth about the tech workers who remain employed might be even more significant for Vancouver's housing market. They are leaving not because they lost their jobs, but because they've realized they can do better elsewhere. They've woken up and done the math, and the equation for a good life in Vancouver simply doesn't balance anymore. The brain drain from the city has reached alarming levels. Analysts and researchers tracking migration patterns are stunned. A comprehensive study by the University of Toronto's Monk School found that 1 in 4 recent science, technology, engineering, and math graduates from Canada's top universities are now working outside Canada. For the brightest computer engineering and computer science graduates, that figure spikes to 30%. But for software engineering, the numbers are even more stark, more brutal. 2 out of 3 software engineering graduates are working outside Canada, primarily in the United States. This is an indictment of the Canadian economy, a declaration from our most talented youth that the system here is rigged against them. They describe a California or bust mentality that has become pervasive on Canadian campuses. It's a gut-wrenching decision to leave your family, your country, and your friends, but the financial incentives have become too powerful to ignore. The city is bleeding its future, and the consequences for the housing market, once supported by this high-earning, high-demand group, are about to become terrifyingly clear. And the cost of that talent bleed is a price Vancouver's already paying in its housing costs. But wait until you see the pure mathematical betrayal of the salary gap. The reasons for this deep, emotional exodus are simple and brutal: money. Tech workers in San Francisco and Seattle earn close to double what their peers in Vancouver earn, even before adjusting for the exchange rate. Think about that: you do the same job, you have the same degree, You work the same hours, yet you are paid half of what your American counterpart is making. That's a daily slap in the face. But when you adjust for the exchange rate, and then factor in that some US states have dramatically lower income taxes than Canadian provinces, the salary gap doesn't just widen, it becomes an unbridgeable chasm. Imagine a software engineer making $150,000 in Seattle with no state income tax. Now imagine a Vancouver engineer making $100,000 Canadian dollars. After federal and provincial taxes, the Seattle worker is taking home a life-changing amount more. That is the moment the Canadian dream turns into a mathematical nightmare. This is the core betrayal, the moment young professionals realize that their hard work and talent are valued exponentially more elsewhere. They are not just leaving for a higher salary, they are leaving for the chance to build a life where they can afford a house, where they don't have to choose between a down payment and starting a family. Beyond the crushing financial inequality, young tech professionals cite other factors driving them south, factors rooted in professional ambition and the desire for impact. They crave the prestige of working for globally recognized brands. They want the career advancement opportunities that simply don't exist at the smaller, more insulated Canadian firms. They want to work on projects with global scale and world-altering impact. Vancouver's tech scene, while growing, simply cannot compete with the sheer ecosystem density of Silicon Valley or Seattle. In those markets, a talented engineer can switch jobs without relocating, building a career through strategic, high-velocity moves between companies. In Vancouver, the options are limited, the ceilings are lower, and the compensation is embarrassing by global standards. Statistics Canada data reveals the scope of the bleeding heart of this crisis. In the first quarter of 2025, Canada saw 29,400 non-permanent residents leave the country. That represents a terrifying 54% increase compared to the same period just 1 year prior. Many of these departing residents are the highly educated international students and temporary workers who were the lifeblood of Vancouver's rental market and the eventual support base for its housing market. They came here to transition to permanent residency and home ownership, but instead, the cost of living and the stagnant wages have driven them right back out. This is a story of national failure. The percentage of MBA students planning to stay in Toronto after graduation has plummeted from a near certain 95% to under 50% over the past 15 years. This trend is a mirror reflecting the reality in Vancouver. Young professionals complete their education, benefiting from high-quality, subsidized programs, and then they leave, taking their massive potential and future tax contributions to another country. Vancouver has been losing skilled workers not just to the United States but to other Canadian provinces as well. This city, this supposedly magnet for talent, recorded a rare population decline in the second quarter of 2025, losing 2,154 residents, the largest quarterly drop since records began in 1951. This decline was driven almost entirely by a collapse in temporary residents, the students and workers who were the engine of the rental economy. The city program director at Simon Fraser University noted that Vancouver has a persistent, fatal problem. It attracts talent, but it can't retain it as they progress in their careers and start thinking about buying homes and raising families. The combination of unsustainable housing costs and pathetically lower salaries compared to the US markets creates an incentive to leave that has become a financial imperative. And as their workers flee, it creates the vacuum that's about to be filled by the next, more dangerous player in this collapse, the terrified investor. The tech worker exodus directly impacts Vancouver's housing market in multiple, devastating ways. High-earning tech workers have historically been the key demographic supporting the city's premium rental market and eventually transitioning to home ownership. When that demographic suddenly shrinks, demand at the upper end of the rental market softens like a rotting fruit. Landlords who purchased investment properties, expecting to rent to well-paid tech workers, are now finding themselves with vacant units, or being forced to accept lower rents than they projected. This crushes their cash flow, breaking the investment math and making rental properties suddenly look like toxic assets. This is the mechanism that feeds directly into the second major exodus hitting Vancouver: investors. The investor exodus from Vancouver's real estate market has been nothing short of a crash. According to Reini Intelligence, investor participation in Metro Vancouver's condo market collapsed from a dominant 50% of buyers between 2021 and 2023, down to a tiny, insignificant 7% in early 2025. This isn't a gradual decline, it's a cliff, an intentional, mass retreat that has left developers without the pre-sale capital they desperately need to secure construction financing. The scale of capital withdrawal goes far beyond just local investors pulling back their funds. Canada experienced a massive capital exodus in the second quarter of 2024 that signaled profound, international panic. Foreign investors withdrew $16.8 billion from Canadian securities. This was the largest foreign investment pullout since the fourth quarter of 2007, right before the global financial crisis. Let that sink in, the flight of capital is now on a level only seen immediately preceding a global meltdown. Bond markets experienced the heaviest losses, with $10.3 billion in outflows. Money market instruments saw a $3.6 billion rush for the exit. Equity and fund shares lost another $3.0 billion in foreign investment. When combined with first quarter losses, the total foreign investment flight reached a staggering $22.65 billion in the first half of 2024 alone. This scale of capital flight signals a fundamental shift in how international investors view Canadian markets. They see it as a volatile, high-risk environment. Vancouver's commercial real estate investment dropped an equally alarming 33% in the first half of 2025 compared to the previous year. The total dollar volume transacted was $4.3 billion, a substantial decline driven partly by the proposed increases in capital gains tax rates, but overwhelmingly by broader, terrifying investor uncertainty. And this withdrawal isn't limited to foreign capital. Domestic investors are pulling back as well, essentially betraying their own market. Canadian companies sent $26.8 billion abroad during the second quarter of 2024, a sharp increase from $7.4 billion in the first quarter. Approximately half of this capital found its way directly to the United States markets. When Canadian capital consistently flows toward international markets, it creates a drought, reducing the vital pool of investment available for Canadian real estate development. The combined impact of foreign investment and domestic capital flight produced a staggering $43.7 billion net portfolio outflow in the second quarter of 2024 alone. To put that in perspective, that equals the federal government's entire infrastructure budget, leaving the country in just 3 months. This capital exodus has immediate, paralyzing implications for Vancouver's real estate market. Without investor capital supporting pre-sales and providing equity for development projects, the entire construction pipeline slows down dramatically, like a heart slowing to a fatal stop. Developers can't build, and as a result, the new housing supply that the city desperately needs simply will not materialize. Longtime Vancouver realtor Brian Yang described the West Side market as dead, with only 25 out of 464 luxury listings between $2 million and $5 million selling in a recent month. The reasons are a poisonous cocktail of high interest rates and the complete withdrawal of foreign capital. Yang personally knows owners from China who have sold their Vancouver properties and are taking their money back home. He describes these as reversal of fortune deals, where capital that flowed into Vancouver during the boom years is now flowing back out, a complete and utter defeat for the market. And the terrifying, emotional climax of this crisis is about to hit the people who bet their life savings on this market. The city of Vancouver is now caught in a financial trap laid by its own government policies and the panicked retreat of capital. The BC home flipping tax, introduced January 1, 2025, combined with the federal property flipping tax introduced in 2023, has further discouraged speculative investment, acting as a final, crushing blow. The federal ban on residential property purchases by non-Canadians, extended through January 2027, has effectively shut off what was once a major source of pre-sale capital for Vancouver developers, the lifeblood of their business model. For municipalities like Richmond and others in Metro Vancouver that relied on high rates of foreign investment, the impact has been severe, traumatic, and immediate. Pre-sale activity in Metro Vancouver tells the story clearly. The region is on track for a 20% decline in high-rise concrete pre-sales from 2024, and a crippling 53% decline from 2023. Only one concrete high-rise project launched in the entire second quarter of 2025. Overall pre-sales, including both wood frame and concrete buildings, are down a staggering 50% compared to long-term historical averages. Stefan Guria, a vice president at Zonder Urban, a major pre-sale tracking firm, stated bluntly, "That's a big collapse." This is the voice of an industry facing total failure. Of the 16,589 pre-sale units on the market in the second quarter of 2025, more than 61% are in what industry insiders call the danger zone. These are projects where pre-sales lag far behind the critical 70% target needed to secure construction financing. Developers need to pre-sell roughly 70% of units before lenders will even think about providing the construction loans. When projects fail to hit that threshold, they are not just delayed, they are cancelled or indefinitely delayed, leaving a toxic trail of broken contracts and financial devastation. The consequences are not theoretical, they are already visible on the skyline. A 60-story curvy luxury project in Vancouver's West End appears to be teetering into insolvency. Other developers are converting condo plans into rentals, essentially admitting that the condo market isn't viable and pivoting to purpose-built rental, which qualifies for different, government-backed financing programs. More than 22% of land sales over $5 million in the first quarter of 2025 were court-ordered, double the same period in 2024. These are not normal market transactions, these are distressed sales, where lenders have foreclosed on properties and are liquidating assets to recover their loans. This is the sound of the market crashing, and the people most affected are not the distant billionaires, it's the average homeowner. The region's unsold condo inventory is expected to increase by more than 60% in 2025. That inventory represents capital tied up in buildings that are not generating returns, but are instead bleeding carrying costs every month they sit unsold. Daryl Simpson, president of Townline, a major Vancouver development company, admitted that the current downturn feels more challenging than anything in his 3-decade career. He attributed this to what he called years of policy whiplash and the complete collapse of mom and pop investing in Vancouver real estate. Small investors who once provided crucial liquidity to the pre-sale market have been driven out by measures designed to cool speculation, but which also eliminated a key source of development capital. The economic impact of a residential construction slowdown extends far beyond the construction industry. The provincial government faces more than $2.2 billion in property transfer tax revenue at risk from declining real estate transactions during a record deficit year. Construction workers are losing jobs. Suppliers face reduced orders. The investor exodus has a direct, immediate, and paradoxical impact on the rental markets. When investors aren't buying pre-construction units, developers can't secure financing. When developers can't secure financing, the critical new rental supply doesn't get built. But paradoxically, Vancouver is currently seeing rental prices decline even as long-term supply constraints persist. This reflects the short-term, brutal impact of reduced demand from the demographic exodus, particularly the loss of the international students and temporary workers. These are the people who were propping up the high-volume rental demand. According to Live Data, Metro Vancouver's average rent for an unfurnished one-bedroom unit in August 2025 was $2,506, down $172 from August 2024. Langley posted the largest year-over-year drop at 13.1%. Burnaby saw rents fall 10.6%. Even Metro Town, one of Burnaby's busiest neighborhoods, saw rents decline over 9%. The panic is setting in. Landlords and property managers are now offering incentives that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. 3 months of free rent has become common. Tenants are successfully negotiating lower asking rents, a phenomenon that Live Report says is happening a lot more than in previous years. This rental market softening compounds the problem for investors who purchased properties expecting strong rental income. When rental income falls short of their projections, the entire investment math breaks down, and the whole house of cards collapses. According to Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, projections, Vancouver's rental vacancy rate is expected to rise from 1.6% in 2024 to 2.1% in 2025, and then to 2.9% by 2027. The 2024 vacancy rate of 1.6% was already the highest in 20 years, excluding the temporary spike during the initial COVID lockdowns. Increasing vacancy rates typically put downward pressure on rents as landlords are forced to compete for tenants, driving prices lower. The office market tells a parallel story of exodus and declining demand that mirrors the residential collapse. Downtown Vancouver's office vacancy rate reached 12.6% in the third quarter of 2025, up from 11.9% in the second quarter. This is the highest vacancy rate downtown Vancouver has experienced since 2004, during the prolonged dot-com bubble burst. Before the pandemic, downtown Vancouver's office vacancy rate was just 4.1%. The current rate of 12.6% represents a tripling of pre-pandemic levels. Yaletown's office vacancy rate is even more brutal, hitting 17.3%, an all-time high for the area. The latest uptick in vacancy has been driven by a significant number of leases expiring without renewal. Occupiers are waiting until their leases expire before cutting back on space, rather than trying to sublet, which suggests they are making strategic, long-term decisions about their space needs. They are making a permanent exit. Major tech companies have put significant Vancouver office space up for sublet, including Microsoft and SAP, who are drastically reducing their footprints. Their message is chillingly clear: big tech no longer needs or wants the space in Vancouver. And the human cost of all this? Consider the small investor who bought 2 Vancouver condo units in 2021, viewing them as a straightforward retirement plan. He put down 20% on each unit and financed the rest at 2.5%. Each unit cost $700,000. His plan was simple: collect rent to cover most of the carrying costs, build equity through appreciation, and sell the units at 65 to fund his retirement. The math worked perfectly on paper in 2021. But nothing has worked as planned. The units are now worth approximately $650,000 each, not the $900,000 he had projected. His equity has shrunk from $140,000 per unit to $90,000 per unit. He's lost $100,000 in total equity. Worse, the rental income hasn't covered his costs. He collects $2,400 per month in rent on each unit, but his mortgage payments, property taxes, condo fees, and insurance total $3,100 per unit. That's a $700 monthly loss per unit, or a staggering $16,800 annually he has to cover out of pocket. He's been covering the shortfall out of his savings for 2 years, hoping the market would recover. It hasn't. His retirement savings are now gone. He is using credit cards to cover the monthly deficits, and those cards are rapidly approaching their limits. At 58 years old, bankruptcy would devastate his retirement plans, but continuing to bleed $16,800 annually is equally impossible. He is considering walking away, accepting foreclosure and the credit destruction that comes with it, just to stop the financial hemorrhaging. These are the devastating, raw, emotional stories multiplying across Vancouver. The confluence of the tech worker exodus and the investor exodus creates a vicious, self-sustaining cycle. As tech workers leave, demand for rental properties softens. As rental income disappoints, investor returns decline. As investors pull back, development stalls. As development stalls, new supply vanishes, which only further deepens the long-term crisis. The entire city is now caught in a financial trap with no clear way out. We've seen the empty, dead towers, the mass flight of the most valuable tech talent, the mathematical impossibility of living a stable life here, and the panicked exodus of billions in both foreign and domestic capital. The true cost of this crisis isn't just in the dropping pre-sales or the rising vacancy rates, it's in the personal financial ruin of the young professional who stretched to buy a condo and is now underwater, and the small investor who saw their retirement dreams implode. The ultimate tragedy is that the policies meant to cool speculation have instead suffocated development and driven out the very people, the workers and the small investors, who gave the market its soul. Vancouver's financial model is broken. The promises made to the city's residents have been shattered. The question now isn't if the fallout will spread, but how far and how deep the wreckage will go before someone is finally held accountable for this catastrophe.